Welcome to another episode of Trees and Lines. We're thrilled to have Renee Bissett and Brian Bruce join us today, the current and former president of Saluting Branches. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about Saluting Branches and the impact that it's having, the origin of the organization, and how folks can get involved in something that's quite impactful and very important. Welcome to the two of you.
Fantastic. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Maybe you can just kind of start by talking a little bit about the organization, where it started, how it started, and the impact it's having.
Sure. Well, I think first let's start with our mission. So Saluting Branches started about 10 or 12 years ago with Rainbow Tree Care. And it started off as a civic project. And they really just wanted to give back to the local national cemetery at Fort Snelling. And they ended up getting about 1,000 volunteers that first year.
Wow.
And as it's grown, the mission has really remained the same. The mission really is to honor American servicemen and women by organizing volunteer tree and landscape care for property dedicated to veterans. So that initial year was in a national cemetery. Now we do locations all over the United States, Puerto Rico, Mexico, all dedicated, whether it's a veteran hospital, a veteran memorial, veteran home. We work in all of those sites to give back to that community.
And for clarity, when you say you work on those sites, the organization is focused on all of the vegetation associated with those properties?
Yes, it could be any kind of landscape care. I've been in the green industry for 20 years, but I am not an arborist. So I'm a master stick picker-upper. So we take all sorts of folks that volunteer, whether it's mulching, tree planting, taking down trees, pruning trees, all of it. Wow.
And Renee, can you share maybe the scope of the organization, number of members, total outreach, states involved, like maybe just contextualize for us, like how big are we talking about?
Sure. So from those early years when they had about 1,000 participants, they realized it was a lot bigger than what they expected for that annual, or it actually just was a one-off event Rainbow Tree Care decided to do. So with that big success, they ended up thinking maybe they had something. So they went to the VA and they talked to them and they said, how can we build this and grow this? And they were a little reluctant. They kind of said, well, maybe start small, 5, 6, 7 sites. And that first year that they really put together Saluting Branches, they had 23 sites. And so now we have over 100. I think we have been at least 112 different unique sites across the United States. We've been in Mexico for a few years, and I think this will be our second year in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
And we expect about 4,500 to maybe even 5,000 volunteers this year.
Wow. Okay.
All on one day?
Yes.
Correct.
It is one event day.
Yeah.
How long has this been going on, and how many presidents and how many terms has there been along the journey?
Yeah, just kind of jump on the coattails of what Renee said. We started this thing back in 2012, and it took about 3 years to really get this thing up off the ground. We had to learn an entire new language. When I say language, meaning the Veterans Administration. So it was a whole new language, a whole new infrastructure, hierarchy that we had to learn because we had to address people all the way to DC and kind of pitch the idea. And just to, one last time jump on Renee's coattails is they said, we think you kind of bit off more than you can chew. And many of us in this industry are past, service members or first responders or something like that. And of course we're like, yeah, you're not going to tell us, we've bitten off too much. Let us figure that out.
Right.
And so we were either going to go around it, go over it, go underneath it, or if we had to, we were going to go through it. We were on a mission to do something, not for those veterans that were still with us, but the ones that weren't. We wanted to protect, and we wanted to beautify the final resting place for these families to come visit their loved ones that succumb to the wars of, that had taken place.
Yeah.
All right, I get a little passionate and a little emotional about this because it's so near and dear to my heart, and we'll kind of get through that later on in this podcast.
Yeah.
But we said no. This is who we are. We're sanctioned by International Society of Arboriculture as well as Tree Care Industry Association, and they even kind of had their doubts. But we knew we had something. There was a mission there, and we were going to conquer that mission and bring to the loved ones what they've been longing for.
Yep.
For so long, so many of these cemeteries, they didn't have a budget. The only one that really had a budget was Arlington. And why? Because it's Arlington. Arlington gets the face of the Veterans Affairs with the unknown soldier there. So we wanted to bring something to these local cemeteries that have never had it before. They welcomed us with open arms. After that first day of service, the Veterans VA came to us and said, hey, you guys are by far one of the largest one-day donor that we have in history. So we knew we were onto something. And so many people on that day of service said, where do I sign up for a lifetime?
Yep.
Because when you're out there on that day and you hear the bagpipes blowing and you hear the trumpet playing taps, you're not human if there's something that doesn't trigger some emotion in you. Because all of us are related to somebody, whether it's a mother, father, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, cousin, that are buried in the cemetery. Yeah, so we were onto something and we had to carry it forward.
No, that's fantastic. So actually, like, my business partner and our CEO of all our portfolio of businesses is a former naval officer. He served as well. And so, through our relationship, I've learned, I'm Canadian, don't hold that against me, but no, joking. But I've learned a lot about actually both the military journey of many Americans and Canadians, and Craig has kind of educated me a lot on what that life is and those contributions are. So I hear you on that in terms of like the impact, and when you learn about it, you get very emotional, very attached to, and we live, with freedom, and that's built on the back of a group of people over the years who have protected our interests. So it needs to be celebrated, which is why I love the organization and what it does. It's fantastic what you guys are doing. And
Tage, what you just said a moment ago, you said celebrated. It has to be celebrated.
100%.
It's got
100%.
And I'll go into, I never was allowed to serve in the military because I was the last one to carry on my name. So what did I do next? I went into law enforcement. I was a cop for about 20 years. And unfortunately, I had to bury a couple of my very good friends who were killed in the line of duty.
Sorry to hear that.
We first heard about Saluting Branches. It was, I think, July of 2015. I was operating a tree care company in Southern California, and I heard about this, and I jumped right on it. There's a celebration to be had. In the military, there's a sisterhood and a brotherhood that exists. And for some of us, when we're in it, we think, oh my gosh, when I transition out of this and I transition into something, I'm going to be missing something. And it's that camaraderie, that esprit de corps, that brotherhood and that sisterhood that I thought I was never, ever going to find. And it absolutely left a blank in my heart. And I didn't know where I was going to find that again. Yeah. I found it in this industry, and more so, I found the ability to celebrate in this one day of service with Saluting Branches.
Oh. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Renee, tell us about your first day, or your first event you participated in.
Sure. So, well, I've been supporting Saluting Branches since the beginning. We had Brandon Hewson, who was at Rainbow at the time, and building up the sponsorship, gave me a call. And immediately when he described what it is, we supported financially with my day job at ACRT. And a few years back, he gave me another call and he said, we're looking for someone on the board. And I said, okay, I would love to give back and help. And he gave, me the opportunity to really, really give back. We work towards that one day of service, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes year long. There's so much planning. It's like planning one wedding, but there's 100 weddings at the same time, and really coordinating what goes on at each of those sites. So for me, I have been volunteering at Lakeview Cemetery. It's a historic cemetery in Cleveland, Ohio. And I should have looked this up, but I want to say there's at least 40, if not 70,000 veterans buried there. And they have a comprehensive veteran program with that cemetery. And so it's a very somber event at that location. The staff at Lakeview are so happy to see us and have us there. They look forward to it every year. And that's the story for so many sites. So we did start at the National Cemetery, but again, our mission is any dedicated property for veterans.
Yeah.
And so it's just been growing. Tej, you said you were Canadian. We got a call a couple weeks ago that said, "Hey, are you in Canada?" I know Brian tried to get us over in France. We haven't made it there yet, but we are planning to.
Yeah.
So anywhere that we can go, we're gonna put our flag there and do it.
So Renee had talked about Brandon, a former employee at Rainbow.
Yeah.
And Renee's being rather humble here. What Brandon did was Brandon called me and said, "Hey, I have this rock star who works at ACRT. It's not if, she has to be on the board." So I gave Renee a call. Within 30 seconds of me talking with her, I'm like, vacancy gone. She's on the board.
Yeah.
I digress.
Yeah. Oh,
give yourself a little more credit, Renee. You've taken this and run with it so well.
Everybody has something that they're passionate about in terms of like their philanthropic initiative or something that they want to contribute back to a community and stuff. And I always find this one I found this one very interesting. Ours, and something I'm very personally attached to, is an education program that my business partner and I co-founded, and it's centered on a certain thing and a certain mandate and initiatives. But this one's so fascinating because, like you said, it's like planning this, there's a day in time and there's a build up to that moment. And I can imagine that the rush of emotions, because just like on a wedding day, right? Like you're building up and it's like an intense exchange, right? As you lead into that event. And then you do that every year, which is kind of unique and very interesting. What are some of you mentioned some of the new geographies probably that you guys want to reach out to. Maybe a wish list of some of the things that, if you could achieve, in a faster time frame, what are like 3 or 4 things that you would love for the audience to know and hear, things that you want to get done here in the next 5 years, within the next 5 years?
No, that's a great question. And I think every good organization needs to have strategy. We need to have good people on the board. And I think the current board we have right now are just absolute strategists and just good visionaries. We've got 1-year goals, we've got 5-year goals, and we've got 10-year goals. This is our 10th year, a decade of dedication is what we're calling it, to our mission, honoring servicemen and women by organizing voluntary tree and landscape care for the property dedicated to veterans. So one of our biggest goals, we want to do it this year, we couldn't come across the funding, was to get over to Normandy because, it will be the 80th anniversary. It's still a goal. We're not going to let financial inability stop us from what we're doing. But when it comes to, you hear of Wounded Warriors, you hear of other veteran nonprofits, 501c3s, we absolutely desire, and we will, again, nothing's going to stop us except for ourselves, to become a household or a name within the veteran community of who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do. It's our why. It's a selfless act, and it's a day of giving back and a day of remembrance. That's what we want to be known by, and that's what we want to be remembered by. We're an industry that is an everyday industry. We're a service industry, and everybody has to have what we do. Why can't we do what we do on a grander stand for these veterans that I personally believe are not getting enough credit and gratitude for what they do and what they have done?
Have you agree? Like, I mean, I could say agree in 10 different languages and emphasize it 1,000 different ways because I completely agree. Have you guys been engaging with the political side of this? Right, obviously, our veterans are an important part. I see head nods. I'm going to stop asking.
That's
my question.
A hard no.
That's a hard no.
No.
Is it a hard no because that's something by choice? You're trying to avoid the political circle, or is it because it's too difficult to incorporate changing administrations and focusing, like what because I could see this being something that is greatly supported by certain political groups, whether it's at a state level, a municipal level, a federal level, but I guess it depends on who we're talking about. But I'm just kind of curious how that intertwines with the mandate of the organization.
Well, we have a very strict policy on not being political. So when you register or you volunteer and you put the saluting flag or saluting branches emblem on, it's no politics.
Yeah.
Right.
We welcome everyone to our site. It doesn't matter what political party you're from. We have a mix on the board. You asked earlier how the board is, or how the infrastructure works. We have a team of over a dozen volunteer board members that just hustle and work tirelessly every year. They lead committees. We have about 6 committees that operate all year that we're always looking for volunteers on. And the amount of backgrounds that vary that we have, that we bring together and work for our mission is countless. We take all types. Some of the goals that we're concentrated on this year too is financial stability. You know, we grew so quickly, so fast over our decade of dedication. Our sponsors didn't keep up with us. So we're working on that. We're working on scaling and building the infrastructure, the growth. And then I love the green industry. You know, I've been here, next year is going to be 20 years for me. We have such a community. It bridges so many different backgrounds. For one day a year, tree crews don't have to be yelled at. They're actually appreciated. They feel good about the community. I mean, so much, especially on the utility side, which is where I come from, it's not like you're welcomed with open arms to do your work. So this is the day that you are welcomed with open arms. Yeah. So you leave your politics behind, you show up with your bucket truck, your shovel, maybe it's just garden gloves, and you get to work and you do it. And that's what it's about.
Look, I'm glad you guys, obviously, it's politically agnostic. I think my question was more centered around, it's not so much like whether we have a political view or not, but just the engagement with potentially the funding that could help accelerate your growth that sits at these different levels. It sounds like you're mostly, if not entirely, funded by the industry, organizations, companies, private companies that are supporting it, right? Which I think is fantastic. I just wasn't. I was just kind of curious, like if funding sources from different state level, federal level organizations is something that's part of your, fundraising strategy.
It is. There's a vision there, Tage. And, for 10 years now, we've just been kind of swimming in the industry pool. If you've got shortcuts to people in different platforms, I'll be the first one to fly on you.
I was actually hoping you could direct me, but okay. No,
I'll jump into the stage.
I'm kidding.
And talk about saluting branches all day long. I've got no problem with that. It's getting that introduction into somebody else's network that can catapult us to a place where we know we can be, will be welcomed, and want to be, for that matter.
So I'm curious a little bit about the logistics in the field. I can see all these different trucks rolling in that they don't work together. How do you manage safety when you have a bunch of people you don't know?
Yeah. Renee, if you don't mind, I'll take that one. I've been a site leader for quite a few places. What it does is 2 things. The industry is looking, and it's becoming harder and harder to find good people to climb trees, as opposed to, and what we're really running into is the industry is getting mechanicized or becoming, bigger, larger, hydraulic fueled machines that are allowing people to get up there. So when a company really invests in an employee, they've invested a lot of money. So one of the first things we say at this day of service is, hey, there's no recruiting. I'd say somewhere around $10,000 it takes to onboard a person and bring them in. That's the first thing we say. Hey, if you're caught recruiting around here, you're no longer welcome. This is not a day of building and buffering your staff or your operations. But to the opposite of that, there's a lot of times people will get together on this day of service and they haven't seen somebody who they used to work with because they did go to another company. So it's almost a day of remembrance of like, hey, not only are we here for this mission, but man, it is so good to see you. I haven't seen you in 2 years, how's Sophia? How's, Cindy? How are the kids or something like that? So at lunchtime, that brotherhood that I talked about or that sisterhood I talked about, bam, it's right back there at the morning time when we're getting people checked in, or at lunchtime, or at the end of the day when we're doing a raffle or something like that. So that brotherhood is coming back together, all surrounded around another brotherhood, around a day of service. It gives me chills just talking about it every time I get to. I love talking about saluting branches because it does nothing but promote, love for who we are, love for our fellow, arborist, a love for our fellow board member, and love for our veterans.
I love it.
So I think of a big cemetery. They're probably interring people all the time.
Yep.
Is there conflicts there, and how do you manage that?
That's why we picked Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Wednesdays through the VA are the lowest internments for the day.
Yeah.
So we work with them every year. They consider us one of the top 5 events that happen on their property. And so we just had a call last week with them. We had all the dignitaries from the locations across the United States on a call to discuss, again, are Wednesdays a good day going forward? Are we in line with, just a check-in? Are we in line with what your expectations are? How can we do better? And we also provide a lot of vetting. So we vet our site leaders who are truly the glue of this day. Yeah. Those site leaders come with so much training, so much support from the organizations. We vet them, we vet the sites, we marry the two up. They're working together to tirelessly bring all the volunteers together. And again, you take your company hat off, you put your Saluting Branches hat on, and you're working with the local sites and the various companies that show up. We have such a great success rate with all the tree care companies and the consulting companies, the equipment companies, to really come together. We provide a lot of safety training, a lot of information on building your local site to what it needs to be. Some sites are very somber, like the one that I attend. We show up, we go through a very emotional proclamation, we review the safety, we go through the day activities, what work's going to be done, where the dangers are going to be. Other sites do that exact same thing, except it's more of a community atmosphere. So they're also bringing in local business. They might have music, they might have raffle prizes. So we try to enable and empower the site leader and the location to kind of set up whatever that site and those volunteers want and really make it a success for them. Personalize it for their experience.
That's great.
Yeah. And if I could add one more thing, Phil, when we do hear, the trumpets start, playing or something like that, if there's an internment close by, they're instructed at the beginning of the day, hey, chainsaws off, chippers off. And it gives the volunteers a time to see what's going on, to hear what's going on. And it's a constant refresher throughout the day of why it is we're here doing what we do and addressing our professional skill set to the matter at hand.
Yeah, I love that. Can you guys share with us the date? I don't know if you guys mentioned the next date that this is going to happen.
September 18th is always the third Wednesday of every month. And it kind of goes back to what Renee said. When we did our due diligence.
Every year.
Yeah, every year, sorry.
Every year.
When we did our due diligence on the VA and what's going on, that's when they let us know, hey, Wednesdays is the lowest internment rate. Fridays, Saturdays is the largest. So we wanted to keep it, obviously, during a work day, because a lot of companies will send a large portion of their crews to local Saluting Branches cemetery for that day.
So how does somebody sitting here listening, what's their next step?
We always like to say we have kind of 5 different ways you can help. We do need money to help support one of the biggest pieces that our volunteers treasure, and that's our t-shirt. So every year when you register, you sign up. Arborwear has been tremendously supportive, and we cannot say enough nice things about Arborwear. They help us design the t-shirt, put that together, our generous sponsors. So really donating is the number one thing that helps us grow. The second thing is sponsoring. We have a lot of different sponsors out there. This year in particular, because it's our decade of dedication, we've had some folks step up like Arborists, who by the time this podcast airs, it won't be a surprise. They have supplied over 5,000 buffs that are a special edition this year that's we hope the volunteers will appreciate. We had Oregon Tool supply us with a bunch of tools that we are surprising sites with that they can use for raffles and giveaways. And we had Yale Cordage provide a very gorgeous rope for every single site that we have. So partners like that have really helped and stepped up. And then third really is donating merchandise. Like I said, some of those have done. But the two most important things that people can do is volunteer and spread the word. So we're always looking for people to participate on September 18th this year. And we're looking for folks to help get the word out. One of our big initiatives and our goals this year is to engage more of the veteran community. We've done a great job, and we can do better in the green industry. Even though it's a large community, it really has a small town feeling. So we're trying to branch out a little bit more to veterans. Bring all those folks together and spread the word and help us get that message out and share our mission.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking time and sharing, the color and everything all the great work that Saluting Branches is doing. We're going to obviously keep following it and, try and getting involved and obviously talk about it within our communities as well, because it's such an important thing that you guys are working on and have done. So we really appreciate you guys making the time today. This was really interesting, and congratulations on just being associated with such a phenomenal organization.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Rainbow Tree Care, because this nonprofit was birthed originally out of Rainbow Tree Care there in Minnetonka, Minnesota. They sponsored us. They gave us a place. They gave us a mailing address. They gave us shipping and receiving abilities. The initial treasurer was Jenny Stetham, who really stepped up, and a lot of other employees. Tom Prosser, Greg Krogstad, Ben Cooper, Brent Cooper, and just the list goes on of volunteers that initially really stepped forward at Fort Snelling, paved the way, set the tone, set the bar, and we just kind of followed their example and awesome. Took it from there. Our board of directors now consists of active, one person from the original Rainbow. The rest of us are all from outside organizations and entities. So if it wasn't for them, I would say that we wouldn't have gotten the jump started that we did and place us where we are today.
I want to get across that Saluting Branches is now our industries. Thanks to Rainbow, we have it. But in order to succeed and grow and really share our mission, we do need more people to come in and help us. We're specifically looking for some folks that have some nonprofit, some fundraising, even some areas that are a little bit outside, like HR and legal, that can help build the organization up.
So, Renee, how do people get in touch with you?
So, salutingbranches.org will get you to our website. You can reach out to us from there, or info@salutingbranches.org. And we'd love to collaborate with anyone on questions they have about volunteering or participating in the day of service, which is September 18th this year. And anytime throughout the year, we're always looking for volunteers for our committees as well.
Very good.
Fantastic.
Thank you both for being on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for giving us the time.
We'll be in touch for some of the other things, and I think this is going to do great. And you guys did a great job.
Yeah, thanks for your support.
Thank you. Yes.
Of course.
That's it for this episode of the Trees and Lines podcast, brought to you by Iapetus Infrastructure Services. If you like the show, please give us a rating of 5 stars on Apple or Spotify. If you have any questions or comments on any of our episodes or ideas for topics or guests in the future, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact us at treesandlines@iapetusllc.com. We'll chat with you soon.